After I died, my archenemy frequently dreamed of me. He went to the temple seeking help. The abbot asked, "Has she come back to kill you?" He remained silent, then sneered, "She came back to ride me." On the bed I looked at the face of my sworn enemy as he slept. I remembered someone saying that this was a face that could charm the entire capital, but unfortunately, no one dared to make a move on him. I reached out and touched it haphazardly. He was startled awake. Song Liujing's pitch black pupils contracted sharply, seizing my restless hand. "Again, can we do this?" He raised his arm to shield his eyes, his Adam's apple bobbing slightly as he cursed under his breath. One time could be called a moment of weakness, but what do you call 7 times in one night? Zhu swaying, just say what you want. Before I could answer, someone arrived outside the door. "Liu Jing, who are you talking to?" He pulled down the bed curtain with a backhand motion, skillfully shielding me inside. The person who entered was his elder brother, his brows furrowed. "Did you see her again? That's not a dream, it's a delusion. She's been dead for 3 years. His eldest brother handed him the medicinal soup. "Drink it." Song Liujing took it, drank it all, and said with a smile, "Brother, don't look at me with that widower's gaze. The one who should be happiest about her death is me." The eldest brother gave him a deep look, sighed, and left, but as soon as the person was gone, Song Liujing's smile faded. He pressed a few acupoints and vomited all the medicinal soup. "Why are you taking medicine?" I asked him. He braced his hands on the counter and looked at me lying on the bed. He didn't answer, but instead walked over and knelt beside me, helping me put on my socks. Halfway through, his hands paused. He realized this was something a husband would do for his wife, yet he performed it so naturally. "Yes, why is that?" His voice was low and clear, revealing no emotion. "Why can others not see you, but I can?" He said such words, yet did not let go of the hand gripping my ankle. He said, "Always dreaming of other men's wives is not a good thing." I blinked my eyes. It's rare to see such an expression on his face, which is usually so arrogant and unrivaled. If he were to find out that I'm actually not dead, he would surely kill me to silence me too. At this time in my previous life, I had already gotten married, and indeed, I had died. I have made 2 mistakes in my life. The first was not becoming a female official and hiding my talents. The second was listening to my family and marrying the eldest son of the Duke's household. The eldest son is noble, aloof, and stands high above others. I never saw him love anyone, even though I was betrothed to him since childhood. Even though I managed the vast Duke's estate in perfect order, falling ill early from the strain, I was not the exception either. Until those 3 years he was imprisoned due to factional strife, when no one believed in him. I ran around for him. Even his old friends advised me, "How can a pregnant woman endure such hardship?" Later, his case was overturned, his crimes were cleared, and he was reinstated to his official position. When he was released from prison, I went to pick him up that day in the capital. A heavy snowstorm raged. Holding an umbrella, I followed behind him, leaving one footprint after another in the snow. He turned around, took the umbrella, and held my hand. I was taken aback and wanted to pull away, but he held on tight. I said, "Tang Jie, not many people have been good to me. Whatever you do, I tend to take it seriously, so don't lie to me." He said, "Okay, I won't lie to you." That was the year we were closest. He took me on a springtime rowboat ride. The water rippled, and I felt a bit nervous. His indifferent eyes glanced sideways, and he mischievously shook the oar. The boat rocked violently. "Ah!" I jumped up and wrapped my arms around his neck. He curled his lips into a smile. "You're squeezing me so tight I can hardly breathe." Halfway through his words, he suddenly fell silent, staring at my face in a daze. "I'm sorry." I quickly let go. "Did I hurt you?" He turned his gaze away, exuding an unapproachable gloom all over. Like when I first married him, he let go of his arms around me. "Get off." Before I could sit still, he started rowing the boat. I nervously grabbed both sides of the boat. "I don't know what I did wrong. Are we going back to the mansion?" I had to beg for a long time before he agreed to come out. This time he said, "Since you're afraid, we won't take the boat." "I'm not really scared, just startled." I didn't finish my sentence, but I already realized how could I, who lost both parents at 5 and traveled alone by boat to the capital to seek refuge at my grandfather's house, Be afraid. The ones truly afraid of boats are the noble ladies raised in deep boudoirs. My cousin, Zhu Baozhen Tang Jie, who had protected her for many years, died early a long time ago. Back when they were innocent childhood friends, he had secretly taken her on a boat ride. Tang Jie. I lowered my head and asked him, "Did you mistake me for someone else? Before I got married, I went up the mountain to pray for blessings, and Zhu Baozhen insisted on following me," she said. "I also hope that everything goes smoothly for my sister after the wedding, but when I closed my eyes to pray to the gods and opened them again, she had already jumped off the cliff." She was the one who grew up with Tang Jie, but I was the one engaged to Tang Jie. Everyone says she was deeply devoted, and I shouldn't have taken her up the mountain. I caused her death, but since childhood, I was taught that as someone living under another's roof, I had to comply with whatever Baozhen wanted on our wedding night. Tang Jie said he knew the marriage was arranged by the elders and that Baozhen's death had nothing to do with me, but now he won't let me mention her. After we disembarked that day, Tang Jie never took me out again. I fell seriously ill, and he didn't come to see me. It wasn't until he heard that I had vomited all the medicine that he finally came. Must it be this way? He stood there, his face cold. The doctor wiped his sweat and hurriedly replied, "It's not that Madam refuses to take the medicine, but her body truly cannot withstand its effects." Tang Jie took the medicinal broth and prepared to feed it to me. I dodged, raising my hand to drink the medicine myself, but he wouldn't allow it. He pinched my cheek, not letting me avoid him. Just like countless times on the bed, he wouldn't look at my face, but when I truly stopped looking at him, he insisted that I could only look at him. It's hard to tell whether it's heartlessness or deep affection. I couldn't tell whether it was the pain from being choked or the bitterness of the medicine, but as soon as I tried to speak, tears fell. I said, "Tang Jie, if I had been the one who died back then, would you?" He smiled. With a chillingly cold smile, I faced his genuine, unmasked hatred for the first time. He hates himself, and he hates me. He wants Zhu Baozhen to come back more than anyone else. He said, "Someone as careful with their life as you, would you be willing to die, getting me? Isn't that the result of your scheming?" He looked at my tears and finally let go, yet his gaze lingered on the spot on my cheek where he had pinched it red. My maid burst in angrily, "My lady values her life. Who was it that risked their life to accompany you, my lord, for those 3 years in prison? If it weren't for the illness left by that miscarriage back then, how could a mere cold now take half my life?" A flicker of pity and shock passed through Tang Jie's eyes, but it quickly faded away. Light and shallow, he said, "Next spring, accompany me on the boat again." Unfortunately, I didn't survive until that spring and died. However, Zhu Baozhen lived on as he had wished. She fell off the cliff but was rescued by the mountain villagers and is now fully recovered. Zhu Baozhen collapsed in Tang Jie's arms, crying and saying, "My sister is dead, what am I to do?" Tang Jie stroked her hair and said, "You still have me." Later, Zhu Baozhen came to my grave. She said that my most respected grandfather had long foreseen that Tang Jie would face imprisonment before entering the cabinet. Every day was a life-threatening ordeal. Xiao Hu, for document anti-piracy printing. Find the book Robot and choose Xiao Hu, stable and reliable, no pitfalls. Zhu Baozhen could not endure a life of hardship, so she faked her death for several years, waiting until Tang Jie reached the pinnacle of his official career. With a bright future ahead, the year when everyone praised her for her good fortune had finally arrived. "Sister, do you know what it feels like to be loved? You don't, do you? You've never experienced it in your entire life. How pitiful." This was the last thing Zhu Baozhen said to me in my previous life. 3. When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn and returned to the day when the marriage proposal was still being discussed. Through the screen, figures moved indistinctly, yet Tang Jie's noble and outstanding appearance could be recognized at a glance. Zhu Baozhen stood by my side, her tone gentle and delicate. "Sister," he insisted on breaking off the engagement. "But how could I ever take away your good marriage? In my previous life, I was deceived by these words of hers." I was just about to say something when Tang Jie's voice came from the other end. He said that he had come today to make sure I wouldn't break off the engagement. Zhu Baozhen's expression changed, her handkerchief clenched tightly in her hand. "Yet," Tang Jie continued, 3 years after the marriage, I will welcome Baozhen as my equal wife." His gaze shifted over, the candlelight blurring his features, making it unclear whom he was looking at. I understood immediately he had been reborn too, unwilling to let Baozhen suffer with him, yet still unwilling to let me go. When Tang Jie left, my grandfather asked me to see him off. The rain mist was hazy in my previous life. I happily handed him an umbrella, but now, I watched from afar, then turned and left. Miss, the maid said, he's still looking at you. Tang Jie stood alone in the rain, somewhat dazed, but soon someone came to hold an umbrella for him. I went to my grandfather's study using the engagement as an excuse. I asked my grandfather to send me to the palace school. Originally, this opportunity was meant for Zhu Baozhen. She refused to go because she was afraid of hardship. I'm not afraid. I had only one thought in my mind. Damn it, I want to be a female official. I'll work as hard as I can to climb as high as possible. Tang Jie was reborn, and he will plan ahead to change his fate of being imprisoned after that. There will be no possibility of overthrowing him, so I must become a high-ranking official, and before he can react, I will nip his bright future in the bud, for I studied with all my might. 3 years later, the palace school teacher picked up my policy essay and couldn't help but exclaim, "I've only seen such excellent writing twice." Another time, it was written by Song Liujing. He was in the south, and I was in the north, separated by a distance of 108,000 miles. The palace school teacher helped me use a pseudonym to take the provincial examination. My performance in the provincial examination was on par with Song Liujing's, and our names became known throughout the 9 provinces. The examination hall was crowded with people. At some point, Song Liujing developed the bad habit of looking for my name first whenever the results were posted. Another 3 years passed. The imperial examination is imminent, and he travels north from the south. We meet in the capital, and he brings a group of brothers and sisters from Jiangdong to pick a fight with me. He writes to me, "Meet me at the northern city post station, no matter what." The handwriting was neat and beautiful. My maid read it several times, scratched her head, and said, "Miss, this challenge letter reads more like a proposal to elope." I went alone on the long street by the river. The spring equinox had just passed. The people from Jiangdong arrived with a fierce momentum, led by Song Liujing riding on horseback. Exuding the unrestrained spirit of youth, I watched leisurely, thinking to myself, such a flamboyant face. No wonder that as soon as he arrived, no one ever said Tang Jie was handsome again. What kind of man rides in a carriage? His brother raised his fists, shouting at me, "Are you some kind of invalid?" I lifted the curtain and stepped out of the carriage. The brother's eyes widened, and he ran back to Song Liujing's side. A group of people chattered loudly in whispers. Song Liujing leaned close to his ear and said something, and the brother then spoke in a loud voice. "Ah, you said she looks so fresh and lovely. Ah, you said she's so fresh and lovely that you can't bring yourself to do it. Ah, you say she's so fresh and lovely, and the one who deserves to die is you. Ah, you say, what do you mean I shouldn't say it all? Oh, my voice is too loud." That big brother was kicked into the river by Song Liujing that night. They invited me to the best restaurant in the capital for a feast. His sister held my hand, eager to give me all the jewelry and gems from her pocket. The atmosphere was lively, with glasses clinking and toasts being exchanged. The flickering candlelight fell on Song Liujing's face, and he kept looking at me. I took the initiative to walk over and raise my cup. He and I belong to different factions, and we both know that after this banquet, we will become political adversaries in the court. He stood up, his dark, profound eyes fixed on me. I thought he was going to say something polite for the occasion. Instead, he asked me, "Miss, are you betrothed?" Someone nearby answered him, "She has been betrothed since childhood." After the banquet ended, I turned to bid farewell to those behind me before boarding the carriage. Song Liujing was leisurely descending the wooden stairs of the tavern. Following the crowd, he noticed my gaze. He stood still, looking back at me. The spring night was soft and hazy, with candlelight flickering. In my past life, I knelt many times at the gates of mansions and begged many people for Tang Jie. Only Song Liujing, whom I had never met before, opened the door for me. He saved my life when I was bleeding heavily after a miscarriage. I never got the chance to thank him before he left for the northern frontier, and we never saw each other again in this lifetime. He never knew in this lifetime to have this feast. To see him once, I achieved through step-by-step imperial examinations. Returning to my grandfather's mansion, I ran into Zhu Baozhen head-on, and Tang Jie behind her. They secretly went boating in the evening. Zhu Baozhen's face showed a mix of embarrassment and a long-suppressed sense of satisfaction. She said, "It was I who begged Brother Tang to accompany me. Please don't blame him, sister. If you wish to go, we can take you with us tomorrow." I ignored her and turned to leave. It was Tang Jie who caught up and blocked my way. He asked me, "You don't want to go?" I retorted, "Why should I go?" His jaw tightened. "Haven't you always wanted to?" I sneered coldly. "So, in our previous life." He had clearly understood my feelings. Seeing my reaction, Tang Jie became even more convinced that I was acting out of anger. His eyes turned slightly cold as he said, "If you think you can use this to gauge your importance in my heart, you might be overestimating yourself. I can call off our engagement with you at any time." He spoke, his tone softening slightly. "But what can you do without me?" I lowered my gaze, then raised it again, letting out a soft, obedient sigh. "Yes, without me. Who else would so meticulously plan the timing of your deaths?" After that day, I placed first in the palace examination. I entered the court as an official 3 years earlier than Tang Jie 5. Over these 3 years, I rose steadily through the ranks. Document anti-counterfeiting, find the book robot and choose Xiaohu, stable and reliable, no pitfalls. However, I repeatedly clashed with Song Liujing over political views, which earned me a trip to prison. I had just been imprisoned during the day, and that very night, Song Liujing came to the prison to bail me out. I was furious. A scholar can be killed but not humiliated. Song Liujing smiled with a roguish grin. "Sir, there's no need to thank me." Even the jailer nearby couldn't help but say, "The two of you truly appreciate each other." It wasn't until the spring of the 4th year that Tang Jie passed the imperial examination with high honors and entered the court as an official. I never showed my face again. Song Liujing spent the entire afternoon flipping through books not far from the desk where I usually worked. The clerk beside him couldn't help but ask, "Lord Song, you've been searching for so long, which case file are you actually looking for?" Song Liujing tapped the desk and asked, "Why hasn't your superior come today?" "She has resigned from her official post." The clerk was surprised, holding a stack of books as he asked, "Did she not inform you, sir?" Song Liujing's hand, which had been tapping on the desk, froze in mid-air. It took him a long moment before he finally spoke. "Oh." As he left, he brushed past another clerk. 2 minor officials gathered together to slack off and chat. "Why does Lord Song look so dejected?" "Oh tilde he found out that my lord has resigned from office." "Ah, if he knew she resigned to get married, he'd be even more heartbroken." Song Liujing did not receive my message. Instead, she received news of my death. The capital was abuzz with rumors. The eldest son of the duke's mansion, whose bride-to-be had not yet crossed the threshold, went up the mountain with her sister to pray for blessings before the wedding. She jumped off a cliff and died 6 before the wedding. Zhu Baozhen insisted on following me up the mountain to pray for blessings. Just as she had in my previous life, I agreed. She couldn't hide her smugness along the way, something I had completely failed to notice in my past life. After she faked her death, everyone sighed over her innocence and rare devotion. Earn a good reputation, and I became the sinner who bore all the hatred. I also hope that everything goes smoothly for my sister after her marriage. In front of the temple, she said the same words as in her previous life, just waiting for me to close my eyes. I knelt down and closed my eyes. Only the sound of the wind was heard. She jumped off the cliff, and I instantly opened my eyes. Below the cliff, Zhu Baozhen followed the rope and jumped onto a small, inconspicuous flat area of the cave. The bamboo forest was dense, blocking out the sky. As soon as her feet touched the ground, she quickly gathered the coarse hemp rope. She groped her way forward. Not far ahead, there should be a dead soldier sent by her grandfather to meet her. She saw a figure, but the man was squatting on the ground, waiting for her to approach. Zhu Baozhen felt a surge of anger rising in her heart and was about to vent it on the dead soldier. But she stepped on something sticky and slippery. She crouched down to touch it and was startled to realize it was bloodstains. She quickly lit a fire starter and saw the pale, lifeless state of the dead soldier. Just as she was about to turn around to call for help, she caught sight of me standing behind her. I raised my knife and struck. and before she could utter a word, the blade had already pierced her chest. I stabbed her several more times. She immediately stopped breathing. In my previous life, during the hardest moments, I once asked Tang Jie, if I had been the one who died back then, would he? At that time, I wanted to use death as a gamble, betting on his guilt, betting on the possibility that he loved me. Looking back now, it was really foolish. Who cares about his little bit of guilt? Who cares about his lingering feelings? Too many things can change. I don't want to wait a moment longer. In my previous life, after I died, my maid was sold by Zhu Baozhen to a brothel. She managed to escape and came to sweep my grave one last time. She wept, saying she wanted to avenge me but felt powerless. She discovered that the doctor who treated me was actually my grandfather's man. Ever since I married into the Duke's mansion, they have been slowly poisoning me, causing me to miscarry and leading to my death a few years later. Grandfather must ensure that when Zhu Baozhen returns, everything is restored to its rightful place. No matter how hard I try to please him, he insists on my death. Zhu Baozhen is the most important to him. After saying this, the maid crashed her head against my tombstone and died. The unblinking gaze in death was exactly like that of Zhu Baozhen before me. Now there was movement at the entrance of the cave. It was my maid. In this life, she moved swiftly, helping me kick the bodies of Zhu Baozhen and the dead soldiers off the cliff. I took the bundle she had brought and changed into a set of clothes. She and I were heading south. Resigning from my official post was merely a smokescreen. The Empress wants to investigate corruption in the grain transport system, which involves the Duke's estate and my grandfather. No one dares to investigate. I volunteered, resigned from my official post, and faked my death using a false identity. I went to Jiangnan to quietly gather evidence of the crimes before setting out. The Empress secretly sent me a letter. She said, "This journey is fraught with danger, and life or death is unpredictable. None of the officials who previously attempted to obtain the evidence of the crime survived. I hope you proceed with caution." I traveled south by boat all the way. Looking back at the capital gradually fading into the glow of the sunset, I secretly made up my mind, given a second chance at life, I will live as brilliantly as possible, leaving a bold and colorful mark in the annals of history. When I return to this place, I will surely take Tang Jie's life. 7. The news of Zhu Baozhen's cliff jump reached the Duke's mansion just as Tang Jie was selecting the wedding attire for our marriage. Everyone in the mansion was saying that the master had been in a particularly good mood lately. In the previous life, Tang Jie had even forgotten what wedding attire he himself was wearing, but in this life, he couldn't help but pick it up. His advisor came to report that someone had jumped off a cliff. "My lord, you have already promised Miss Baozhen that you would marry her in 3 years. Why would she still jump off a cliff?" Tang Jie's hand, which was feeling the wedding dress, paused. Having lived a second life, some things he had long understood. In his previous life, Zhu Baozhen had faked her death, but that was just a trick Baozhen used to win his affection, and he couldn't bring himself to blame her. He said, "I suppose it was my marriage to Zhu Suiying that upset her, so she resorted to her old tricks again." He got up and went to his grandfather's mansion to look for me. Just as he arrived at the mansion gate, he saw white lanterns and couldn't help but laugh inwardly. They really made it look like the real thing. He had been deceived in his previous life as well. Walking through the hall, I ran into my grandfather. Tang Jie asked as soon as he opened his mouth, "Where is Suiying?" His tone was unhurried, carrying a hint of arrogance. "Did she say something to Baozhen again? Every time I get close to Baozhen, she feels wronged and bullies Baozhen. If we don't teach her a lesson in time, she'll use her seniority in the household to push Baozhen around everywhere." But grandfather didn't speak. His old face was as pale as death. Tang Jie was puzzled. He turned his head and saw my memorial tablet. He froze in place, asking dazedly, "What is that?" Grandfather was convinced that both Baozhen and I were dead, but he dared not say it. He feared that if he did, he would completely lose the leverage he had over Tang Jie, so he only said, "Zhu Suiying is dead. If the elder sister dies, the younger sister must observe mourning, so I sent Baozhen to the estate in the countryside, and she will return in 3 years. Tang Jie's voice was somewhat strained as he asked, "Where is the body?" In such a vast mountain forest, after the fire and the rain, it's impossible to find. Tang Jie's expression turned as cold as ice. He walked up to my memorial tablet, gave a dark, chilling smile, and raised his hand to knock it over. She cherishes her life so much, she wouldn't dare to die, yet no one around dared to utter a word. Go find her, his advisor asked. Find whom? Tang Jie said. Find my wife, I want her back. 8 Tang Jie searched for me for 3 years, but never found me. Yet in those 3 years, I found evidence of his crimes in my previous life. Although Tang Jie himself did not accept bribes, the collateral branches of the Duke's residence were not clean. This also became the key for his political opponents to send him to prison. Once he turned the tables and came to power, he cut ties and cleaned house, thus restarting his political career. Now, I have been an official for 3 years longer than him. With more time, I have been collecting evidence step by step. I saved a minor official in Jiangnan who had been framed and wrongfully killed in his previous life for diligently investigating cases. Only then did I realize that Tang Jie was not innocent. I had been deceived by him and became a pawn to help him escape from prison. I obtained evidence of my grandfather's crimes of embezzling grain shipments and extorting local areas on behalf of the Duke's estate. 3 years later, I returned to the capital. It was a heavy snowstorm. At an inn on the outskirts of the capital, rarely visited by passers-by, I ordered a bowl of wonton soup. Warrior maiden, may I ask how to get to the temple on the eastern hill? A pretty lady came up to talk to me. I pointed her in the wrong direction. She thanked me, sat down beside me, and ordered a cup of tea. This damn weather is going to freeze a person to death. She fanned herself while covering her mouth, whispering to me, the higher-ups have said that the situation in the capital is tense, and no one must know you're still alive. The Duke's residence has colluded with the palace eunuchs. The eunuch has already been secretly captured. Just wait 7 days until the eunuch's confession is extracted, then you can hand the evidence over to the Dali temple. Now, various factions are searching for you everywhere. You need to find a safe place to stay, hide for 7 days. I glanced around and whispered, where should I go? She said, do you have someone you trust the most, who can protect the evidence with their life just like you? A face immediately came to mind. Yes, who is it? Song Liujing. Upon hearing the name, the beautiful woman covered half her face with a fan, her eyes revealing a meaningful I understand you too expression as she looked at me. I lowered my head to eat the wontons. She asked with a playful smile, do you know how that guy reacted when he found out you were dead? 3 years ago, upon hearing the news of my death, Song Liujing paused for a moment and simply uttered a brief "oh." The next day, he attended court as usual and practiced his swordsmanship as usual. Whenever he had free time, he even thought about which restaurant to visit for a feast during his day off. 3 years passed, and to this day, he acted as if nothing had happened, as if he had long forgotten about me. Those around him sighed, as expected of a sworn rival. Indeed, it's better when a political opponent is dead. No one in the court dares to openly challenge him anymore until a few days ago, when Song Liujing passed by the tavern after work, the very same tavern where he first arrived in the capital and where we first met at the Northern City Post station. He remembered that I was standing by that wooden window at the time. Behind me was the overwhelming glow of the setting sun at that moment. His brother asked him, what are you looking at? He said, the capital is a splendid sight. His brother gave him a sidelong glance. Cut it out. Haven't you seen enough sunsets in Jiangdong? Aren't they just the same as the ones in the capital? Song Liujing lowered his head with a faint smile. Right, Song Liujing thought. It's actually the person who is beautiful, absolutely radiant, his brother said. Don't even think about it. Although she used a pseudonym, your eldest brother still managed to find out her family background. There is an old feud between her family and yours. Song Liujing said he knew. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw me take the initiative to bring over wine and strike up a conversation with him. He didn't really pay much attention to what was being said. His mind was filled with enemy, enemy, enemy. It would be impolite to remain silent any longer. He could say anything, so he stood up and spoke. Miss, are you engaged? Damn it, he thought. How did I end up saying what was on my mind? Song Liujing felt that something was off with herself. 3 years have passed. The person was already dead and gone. Why am I starting to reminisce again? Stop, stop. He looked at the tavern, at that wooden window, and felt a sudden tightness in his gut, as if he were about to vomit. He didn't understand. He wanted to completely erase me from his memory, so, the next day, he took leave and went to the temple. He told the abbot that he kept dreaming of a beautiful girl who had died. After saying this, he raised an eyebrow, feeling that his words sounded strange, and added, "The beautiful girl came to kill me." "Oh," the abbot asked him, "who is that girl to you?" "A sworn enemy." "Oh," the abbot asked again, "are you going to drive her away?" Song Liujing's eyes flickered with a faint light, his tone extremely soft. "Even in death, she still bothers me. If she comes to kill me, then let her kill me." He gave a careless smile. "I asked her if it hurt to die, if she was afraid of the darkness underground. She didn't say a word, not a single word to me, not before she died, and not after she died." "Benefactor," the abbot interrupted him. The abbot asked, "Does your heart ache?" "What?" The abbot said, "Can you tell the difference? Is it pleasure, or is it pain? Do you hate her, or do you love her?" The abbot sighed and said, "Benefactor, the dead cannot be brought back to life. Please restrain your grief." Song Liujing paused for a moment, then smiled. His slender fingers curled slightly, gesturing for the abbot to lean in closer. The abbot leaned in. He whispered fiercely into the other's ear, "What nonsense are you spouting? You stinky monk, I'll burn your beard off." As a result, he still didn't burn it. He donated all the silver he had on him. He went down the mountain with nothing but himself. "There is only one thought in my mind, my condolences. I'm not her husband." "What condolences?" That night, Song Liujing's eldest brother searched for him all night. Finally, he was found on the highest watchtower in the capital. As the lanterns lit up, tonight was the Lantern Festival. Song Liujing may seem carefree, but when it comes to handling matters, he is decisive and resolute. In the entire family, he is the youngest and the most intelligent. Back in Jiangdong, the threshold of his home was nearly worn out by suitors. Everyone said he had a face that wouldn't be troubled by love, but now, Song Liujing leaned against the pillar, tall and graceful, his clear eyes fixed on his brother. "Bro." As soon as he spoke, his brother knew he was drunk. How long had it been since he last called him brother? Song Liujing said, "On the day Zhu Suiying died, I went to her grandfather's house but was stopped outside. Her servant asked me who I was and what my relationship with her was. I thought it over and realized I was just her colleague, and also her most despised political rival. I know she used a pseudonym to serve as an official without her family's knowledge, and I cannot speak of it, so when the servant asked me again, I could only say, there is no connection. Brother, I am nobody." The moonlight illuminated his face, revealing its deep, defined contours. It also illuminated his tears. He said, "Brother, I miss her so much." But the next day, when Song Liujing woke up, it was as if nothing had happened. He never mentioned me again. He attended court as usual, only growing increasingly thin. Colleagues were all saying that Lord Song was becoming more strikingly handsome, inexplicably gaining a certain allure of a widower. As these words were spoken, the true widower, Tang Jie, was listening nearby. His gaze shifted to Song Liujing, a flicker of emotion stirring in his eyes. After the court session, Tang Jie was reviewing old case files when he recognized my handwriting at a glance. He asked his colleague, "Where is this person?" The colleague said that he had resigned and returned to his hometown 3 years ago, and it was heard that he went back to get married. Tang Jie, who had been searching for me for 3 years, sensed something amiss at that moment. That day, Tang Jie encountered a heavy snowstorm in the capital on his way home from work. He sent his advisor to Jiangnan to find my whereabouts. Unfortunately, he was one step too late. At that time, I was at an inn in the outskirts of the capital, holding evidence of his crimes, and had just finished my last Wantan 10. I entered the capital and made my way to Song Liujing's residence. I lay on the rooftop. I planned to hide in his room for 7 days under the cover of night, then deliver the evidence of his crimes to the Dali temple. But as soon as I made the slightest movement, Song Liujing, who had been sitting idly on a sandalwood chair under the eaves, playing with something, instantly pricked up his ears, highly alert. "I forgot. This guy is both literary and martial." His elder brother asked, "What's wrong?" Song Liujing lowered his long eyelashes slightly. "It's nothing." The physician attending to him, however, wore a troubled expression. Song Liujing said to his brother, Don't trouble the physician. I can eat and sleep, what illness could I possibly have? Besides, what does her death have to do with me? His elder brother replied with just one sentence. Did I mention her? Song Liujing fell silent, the elder brother said nothing, and he and the imperial physician sighed together. Prescribe the medicine. Prescribe the medicine. The medicinal broth was brought in. Song Liujing's eyes were cold and weary, and he simply refused to drink it after waiting for a long time. His eldest brother finally left. I groped my way down from the roof beam, slipped, and fell onto his bed. It was bitterly cold with heavy snow outside, and the chill was truly unbearable. I have been traveling for several months straight, and my whole body aches. His bedding is incredibly soft. Song Liujing entered the inner room, lifted the curtain, and saw me curled up like a quail in his pile of blankets. I looked up and met his beautiful eyes. They locked eyes, the air growing still. His gaze held not a ripple of emotion. A few seconds later, he sighed and said, "How do you plan to kill me this time?" Oh, he can no longer distinguish between dreams and reality. I sat up straight, about to explain to him, but he thought I was about to take action. With a cold expression, he pushed me down onto the bed with a backhand motion. After several rounds of exchanges, the fight was intense, and I was panting heavily. He wasn't even using any effort, he was just toying with me. He pressed me into his blanket, his dark eyes fixed intently on me. Too many uncontrollable dangers have accumulated in the depths of my eyes. Suddenly, I became acutely aware that this person had been teetering on the edge of collapse for a long time. Song Liujing was only wearing an inner garment, and after our few rounds just now, it was completely disheveled. He had a slender build, with tight and smooth muscle lines. See it clearly on it. There is one scar after another. He is self-destructing. I turn my face away, thinking of getting up to speak with him properly, yet I was ruthlessly pushed back down. I took a deep breath, wrapped my arms around his neck, and kissed him. Sure enough, his pupils contracted sharply, and he abruptly let go of me. I sat on the bed in a daze. I blinked my eyes, my judgment clouded by desire, and I wanted to step forward to kiss him again, but he caught my wrist and said coldly, "Is this allowed?" I decided to play along and deceive him to the end. I asked him, "Lord Song, who am I?" He was surprised that I actually spoke. He gave me a cold stare for a long time before saying in a low voice, "Zhu Suiying, the dead, silent Zhu Suiying." I nodded repeatedly. "Who is Zhu Suiying to you?" He averted his eyes. "Political rival." Wrong, I said with a serious face. "Talking nonsense. Zhu Suiying is your sweetheart Tilda." He froze for a moment, then gave a cold smile, lifted the curtain, turned around, and got off the bed. He picked up the bowl of medicinal soup and drank it all without even blinking. He leaned on the desk with one hand, his black hair disheveled, his gaze deep and heavy. He was waiting for the medicine to take effect. He waited for a quarter of an hour. He turned his head and saw that I was still in his bed, hugging his blanket and sleeping soundly. He was so angry that he laughed. "Forget it," he said hoarsely. "If it can't be cured, then forget it." He walked over in a few steps and pushed me awake. I groggily opened my eyes, about to speak, when the back of my head was covered by his broad, dry, and warm palm. He lowered his head and kissed me. It was invasive and domineering, reckless and unrestrained. 11 The next day, the snow had stopped. The sky was just beginning to lighten when the abbot was awakened by a knock at the door. As soon as he opened it, he saw a tall, upright young man with dark, piercing eyes. The abbot asked Song Liujing, "Benefactor, has she come back to kill you again?" Song Liujing remained silent for a moment, then sneered, "She came back to ride me." The abbot, with his vast experience, opened his mouth for a long moment before closing it again. The abbot wondered to himself, what could it mean for someone to come so early in the morning to tell him, a monk, such things, such a handsome person? Yet it's a pity he's a madman, always doing absurd things. Yet the abbot still offered a kind smile on his face. "Benefactor, are you asking why she would do such a thing?" "No." Song Liujing's voice was like spring water steeped in a cool night. "File anti-piracy printing, find a book robot selection, stable and reliable, no pitfalls. I'm asking, does she only do this to me, or does she also visit others' dreams?" Outside, snow beats against the bamboo grove. The abbot thought to himself, this is a possessive madman. The abbot sighed and said, Lord Song, I originally didn't want you to know. After all, secrecy is key to success. But your majesty sees the widower-like appearance of the Lord every day at court, fearing that one night you might return and end your own life with a single sword stroke. Song Liujing looked up, puzzled. The abbot handed him a secret letter. The abbot clasped his hands behind his back and said, Lady Swaying faked her death for 3 years, gathering evidence of crimes and achieving great merit. Her Majesty asked her what she wanted. She said she wanted a new identity, a lot of silver, and a lot of time off. She also said she wants a great beauty. Your Majesty asked her why she only wants one. She said, if there were more, that great beauty would get jealous and be quite difficult to console. The abbot smiled sincerely. Congratulations, Song the Great Beauty. His Majesty is going to bestow a marriage upon you. That night Song Liujing returned to her warm bed. He reached out and held me tightly, buried in the crook of my neck. He took a deep breath. He said, the emperor is going to arrange a marriage for me. The one he's chosen is a girl with a very bad heart, who has deceived me for a long time. I stroked his hair and said, oh, then marry her if you like. Song Liujing said in a muffled voice, Zhu Suiying, you can't do this. You should say, Song Liujing, you can't marry anyone else. Song Liujing, you can only be mine. For all eternity. Song Liujing, I stroked his hair. Don't cry, I'm not dead, I've come back. That night, Song Liujing cried for a long, long time. He was nothing like the decisive, unapproachable figure he appeared to be when dealing with outsiders. I thought to myself, he really is hard to please. 7 days later, the palace eunuch confessed to the crime. I went alone to the Dali temple to submit the evidence of guilt. Song Liujing and I worked together, taking the emperor's handwritten decree and leading troops secretly to the duke's residence to stabilize Tangier. That day marked exactly 3 years since I fell off the cliff. My memorial tablet is still in the duke's mansion. Grandfather hasn't yet told Tangier that Zhu Baozhan is dead. Tangier has always believed that Zhu Baozhan was being raised at a rural estate. He intends to marry her. Before that, he held a grand funeral for me to preserve his own reputation. Everyone praises him for being affectionate and righteous. In the duke's residence, many people came to pay their respects. Some chatted, saying they heard that the deceased would appear in the dreams of their loved ones. Lord Tang, someone asked him, has your wife ever visited you in your dreams? Tangier was taken aback. No, I haven't. Then, with a smile, he added, it's only a matter of time. She's so fond of me that she won't leave even if I try to drive her away. These words were heard by all his colleagues in the group. Even Song Liujing, who was at the very end of the line, heard them. Everyone stepped forward one by one to bow and offer their condolences. From time to time, they sighed, what a pity, such deep affection between a young couple. It was Song Liujing's turn. He looked up and saw Tangier holding my memorial tablet in the role of a husband. Those around him thought he would offer condolences like everyone else. Unexpectedly, he took a step forward, the corners of his eyes slightly raised, and said with a smile, Tangier, isn't it lonely and cold sleeping alone in your bed? His tone couldn't have been more provoking. Tangier tightly gripped the memorial tablet, his expression somewhat contorted, just about to open his mouth to refute. His strategist darted out from behind him, looking flustered. My lord. Tangier slightly furrowed his brow and took a step back. The strategist whispered in his ear, I've found out. The one who resigned from office is indeed Zhu Suiying. 6 years ago, she took first place in the imperial examination under an assumed name and became an official. Moreover, traces of her have been discovered in Jiangnan. It seems our people have been tampered with by her. A flicker of shock passed through Tangier's eyes, followed by a smile. She is still alive. My lord. The strategist, seeing that he couldn't grasp the key point, grew anxious. The evidence of the crime must have fallen into her hands. Tangier didn't take it seriously. He said calmly, Zhu Suiying wouldn't want me to go to prison. She was the one who saved me back then. She has me in her heart. Just coax her a bit and she'll be fine. But where is she now? As soon as the words fell, a strange unease flickered through Tangier's heart. He looked up and noticed that, just a few steps away, the unruly Song Liujing was staring at him. His gaze was resolute and filled with a murderous aura. Tang Jie asked his strategist, "Do Zhu Suiying and Song Liujing know each other?" No one answered him because in the very next moment, a gust of wind whistled past, and an arrow shot through, slitting his strategist's throat. It was only a finger's breadth away from Tang Jie's head. The chaotic crowd dispersed like a tide, with shouts, curses, and cries of misery. It took Tang Jie a while to realize. His home had been raided. 13. The Duke's residence and my grandfather's family were completely uprooted. The situation is changing rapidly. No one in the court dares to mention this matter, however. On the streets and in the alleys, the common people are applauding and cheering. Soon, another piece of news arrived. Lord Song is getting married before my wedding. I went to the prison to see Tang Jie in the filthy environment. He still sat upright, unable to shake off his arrogant demeanor. "Why?" he asked me. "You were willing to run around for me for 3 years back then. So why are you so determined to see me dead now?" I said. "Because he deserved it, and I am no longer his pawn, nor his wife." He smiled self-mockingly. "You've been reborn too. You've been planning to get back at me from the very beginning. Do you think climbing into Song Liujing's arms will help? If I tell him you were once mine, do you think he'll still want you, Zhu Suiying, for all eternity? You are mine." Before he could finish his sentence, my bayonet had already pierced in and out. I told him, "Zhu Baozhen is also dead." He looked up, his eyes filled with shock. Impossible. He was still waiting for Zhu Baozhen to send him a letter, hoping she would find a way to rescue him. He had also used Zhu Baozhen as a pawn, as if it were another version of my former self. He speaks of love so passionately, yet in truth, he loves himself the most. Tang Jie was almost breathless, suppressing his pain, yet he still managed to ask me, You could even bring yourself to harm your own grandfather." "Yes," I smiled brightly. "In their previous life, why didn't they think before taking action that I am also his own granddaughter?" I turned to leave, but Tang Jie grabbed the hem of my skirt tightly. He looked at me, his eyes stripped of all pretense, filled with the confusion of a person facing death. "If back then, when I took you on the boat, I hadn't mistaken you for Baozhen, he died." I kicked his hand away, kicked away those hands that I had long yearned for, yet had never once held mine tightly. 14. The day after the wedding, the mansion was filled with joy and festivity. Early in the morning, Song Liujing's sisters woke me up and stuffed me with a bunch of delicious treats. They chatted away, gossiping about the north and south ends of the city. "Next time, when you have a day off, we'll take you to Jiangdong for some fun." The group didn't disperse until it was dark that night. I got up and found Song Liujing was not by my side. The maid said he had gone to the tavern in the north of the city to buy me some food. Still eating, I buried my head under the quilt and muttered, "Is he trying to fatten me up like a pig?" On his way to the northern part of the city, Song Liujing first stopped by his brother's residence. This was the same brother who had told Song Liujing at the tavern in the northern part of the city, "Don't even think about it." It was midnight, and the night was at its darkest. That brother was sound asleep. "Brother Ma, wake up." Brother Ma groggily rubbed his eyes. Song Liujing stood by his bedside, performing a dance with a cold expression. Once the dance ended, Brother Ma asked him, "You woke me up in the middle of the night, Amham, just to show off your restless dance moves?" "No." Song Liujing slowly lifted his eyelids and said, "I have a wife." "Oh." Brother Ma gave him a very unfriendly smile. "So you dragged me out of bed in the middle of the night, all the way from the south of the city to the north, just to force me to watch you dance and show off that you have a wife?" "Amham." Song Liujing smiled sincerely. The next day, during the morning court session, everyone noticed that Brother Ma and Song Liujing, who were usually as close as real brothers, one was scowling and looked dead tired, a bleeding eyebrow that made him look even more handsome. "Lord Song, what happened to you?" A colleague spoke up for Song Liujing, giving Horse Brother a sarcastic look. "Who hit you?" Horse Brother rolled his eyes. Song Liujing simply said, "My wife." That colleague was usually henpecked, and now having found a kindred spirit, he couldn't help but have tears glistening in his eyes. "Was that also done by your wife?" "No," Song Liujing said. I have a wife at home, and my wife loves me very much." Song Liujing smiled sincerely. The colleague thought, "No wonder he got beaten up." Who asked? Brother Ma understood his colleague's thoughts and said, It wasn't me who hit him. He got too excited while dancing the second part and bumped into the door. I was about to apply medicine for him, but he wouldn't let me. He said he had to go home so his wife could see him and feel sorry for him. After the court session ended, carriages and horses gradually departed one after another. Brother Ma watched Song Liujing galloping away on horseback. Feeling deeply moved, he thought of how Song Liujing, in order to persuade his elder brother, had disregarded the old feud between their families to marry Zhu Suiying. Kneeling before the ancestral tablets and enduring a heavy blow from his brother that left his head blooded without uttering a word at that moment, Song Liujing looked up and said with reverence, "Meeting her was already a rare blessing in this life, and I will never let go of her hand." 15 In my previous life after I died, there was one thing I had forgotten, Zhu Baozhen said before my grave. "Sister, do you know what it feels like to be loved? You don't, do you? You never experienced it in your whole life. How pitiful." That's all I remember, but I forgot. Her words were also heard by another person at that time. He came all the way from the northern frontier, kneeling half before my tombstone. He brought me delicious meat dumplings from our hometown. His eyes were as clear as jade, and his smile was pure and innocent. He sat with me all afternoon, watching the vast, fading sunset glow. At that time, he swore to the heavens, if I could start over, I would give all my love to her, give everything I have to her. The love of family, the love of friends, and my insignificant love. Later, I was reborn. I forgot about this matter. Song Liujing did not reincarnate. He had no memories of his previous life, yet he still did it. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. My fiancé's beloved insisted on following the army to the border despite all advice. She ended up being captured by the enemy and subjected to endless humiliation. Becoming pregnant on our wedding night, I begged Jiyu Linchuan not to leave, to grant me, his lawful wife, a little dignity, but he looked at me with disgust. "I won't touch you, Yua is pregnant, and I will protect her." I didn't cry or make a scene. The next morning, I got up early to pay respects to my in-laws in my previous life. I refused to endure the humiliation and insisted on a public divorce to appease me. The old prince personally broke Jiyu Linchuan's leg as an apology. The old princess arranged for Wen Yaoyu to marry a butcher, resulting in the death of both mother and child. Jiyu Linchuan showed no change in expression upon learning of it, yet, after seizing power, he forced me to consume an aphrodisiac and sent me to a beggar's den, allowing the lowly commoners to freely humiliate me. All of this is what you deserve. The suffering you are endured, I will make you repay 100-fold. Until my 9th pregnancy, I had a difficult labor and died in excruciating pain in a dilapidated temple. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the night. He insisted on going to find Wen Yaoyu, Jiang Zhiling. "Haven't you caused enough trouble?" Jiyu Linchuan's icy voice echoed, stirring the bone-deep pain from my past life. The wedding candles flickered, and the red bed curtains fluttered. It should have been a night of deep affection and sweet intimacy. Yet, clad in his wedding attire, his brows and eyes were filled with an unyielding aura of hostility and impatience. In my past life, it was this very demeanor of his that provoked me. I wept and shouted, demanding to know why he had to humiliate me so. Why he had to abandon me on our wedding night to seek out that notorious Wen Yaoyu. But now, I simply watched him quietly, looking at this face that once drove me to madness with love, and also to the depths of hatred. I slowly rose and walked over to him, reaching out to straighten the slightly wrinkled collar of his wedding robe. My fingertips were icy cold, and as they accidentally brushed against his neck, he abruptly stepped back, his eyes filled with even more disgust. "Don't touch me." I obediently withdrew my hand and even gave him an exceedingly gentle smile. I said softly, "Husband, the night is deep and the dew is heavy. When you go to find Miss Wen, remember to put on an extra outer garment so you don't catch a cold." Jiyu Linchuan's prepared scolding and angry words all got stuck in his throat. He stared at me blankly, as if he didn't recognize me, his eyes filled with scrutiny and suspicion. "What trick are you playing now? You are overthinking, my husband." I lowered my gaze, my voice as light as a feather. I have simply come to understand. Miss Wen has suffered so much and is with child. This is precisely the time when she needs comfort. It is only natural that you, my husband, should go and stay with her. However, I paused, a glimmer of tears shimmering in my eyes, perfectly conveying a hint of vulnerability and plea. But tomorrow morning, I still need to serve tea to your father and mother. Could you return before dawn? I don't want to worry them about us. These words, how magnanimous and how humble they sound. Jiyu Linchuan's brows furrowed even tighter. He might have thought I would throw a tantrum, even threaten to die, and he had already prepared harsher words to wound me, but he never expected me to be so understanding. This made him feel as if he had punched cotton, leaving him with an indescribable frustration. You know what's good for you. He abruptly flicked his sleeve and strode away without looking back. The door slammed shut with a bang, shaking loose a bit of dust and causing the flickering shadows of the dragon and phoenix wedding candles to sway violently. The smile on my face froze inch by inch the moment the door closed. I waited alone all night. I became the laughingstock of the entire capital. Everyone said that Jiang Zhiling, the legitimate daughter of the Duke of Zhengguo's household, was abandoned by her husband, the heir of the Rui prince, on their wedding night, proof of how unwelcome she was the next day. With 2 faint dark circles under my eyes, I appeared punctually before my parents-in-law to pay my respects. Jiyu Linchuan had indeed returned before dawn, and now he was sitting beside me, his complexion even worse than mine, carrying the chill of the early morning and a faint, elusive scent of cosmetics. My mother-in-law, Princess Rui, looked at me with eyes full of heartache and guilt. My father-in-law, Prince Rui, wore an expression of fury and picked up a teacup from the table, ready to hurl it at Jiyu Linchuan. You unfilial son. In my previous life, it was at this moment that I burst into tears, confirming that I had suffered a great injustice. Seeing me cry, the old prince became even more furious and immediately ordered someone to bring the family discipline tools. But this time, before he could act, I rose and knelt on the ground. Father, please calm your anger. This matter is not my husband's fault, it is my own shortcoming. Last night, I was feeling unwell and feared passing my illness to him, so I urged him to rest in the study. The old prince's hand, holding the teacup, froze mid-air as he looked at me in disbelief. Jiyu Linchuan also turned to look at me abruptly, his expression extremely complex, filled with shock, suspicion, and, more than anything, the embarrassment of being seen through. He probably thought that my feigned demeanor was even more contemptible to him than making a scene and crying. Ha, Jiang Zhiling, you truly are a dark horse. He lowered his voice to a volume only the 2 of us could hear and sneered. Such cunning really makes me see you in a new light. I ignored him and simply looked up at the prince, my eyes pleading. Father, occasional playful moments between husband and wife are normal. It was my lack of understanding that caused you and mother to worry. Please punish me. The old prince choked on his anger, unable to vent it, and could only slam the teacup down heavily, glaring at Jiyu Linchuan. For the sake of Zhiling speaking up for you, I'll let you off this time. If you dare cause trouble again, I'll break your legs. My mother-in-law took my hand and pressed a heavy sandalwood box into my arms. Inside were the keys and tokens for managing the prince's household. Good child, you've been wronged, Linchuan. He's just a scoundrel. From now on, this household is in your hands. If anyone dares to bully you, let me know, and I'll stand up for you. With that, she ordered several more boxes to be brought in, all filled with dazzlingly brilliant jewelry. I respectfully accepted them and thanked Her Highness. Beside us, Jiyu Linchuan watched as Her Highness held me in such high regard, his expression growing increasingly dark. He probably thought that I had exchanged a night of grievance for the power and wealth of the entire royal mansion, a truly worthwhile deal. Yes, more than worthwhile in this lifetime. What I want goes far beyond this. On the 3rd day after I gained control of the household, I began inspecting the various shops under the royal mansion's name. The most prosperous treasure shop in the capital is the largest jewelry store of the royal mansion. I want everyone in the capital to see that I, Jiang Zhiling, am now the head mistress of the Ruiwang mansion. As expected, I encountered Wen Yaoyu in the shop. She was dressed in plain white clothes, with no makeup on her face. yet she appeared delicate and pitiable, evoking a sense of compassion in anyone who saw her. She was stroking her slightly bulging belly, frowning as she said to the shopkeeper, "Although this jade hairpin is of good quality, the style is too old-fashioned. Lingchuan wouldn't like me wearing it." When she saw me come in, a flicker of panic flashed in her eyes, but then she straightened her chest as if to show off, pronouncing the name Lingchuan in a soft and coquettish tone. The noble women around immediately cast amused glances in my direction. In my past life, I would have been so furious that I trembled all over, and would have embarrassed her on the spot, but now, I just smiled and stepped forward, saying to the shopkeeper, "Bring out the best blood jade bracelet in your shop for Miss Wen to see." The shopkeeper froze for a moment, looking at me, then at Wen Yaoyu, unsure whose instructions to follow. I raised my voice. "What, are my words no longer of any use now?" The shopkeeper trembled in fear and immediately bent over to fetch the bracelet. When Yaoyu hadn't expected me to react this way, biting her lip, she challenged me somewhat unwillingly. "Sister consort, you certainly know how to throw your weight around, but to those who don't know better, it might seem like you're deliberately flaunting just to embarrass me. What kind of talk is that, sister?" I personally took the brocade box from the shopkeeper and opened it. Inside lay a blood-red jade bracelet, warm and translucent, instantly capturing everyone's attention. I handed the bracelet to her, smiling even more gently and graciously. "Sister, in your current condition, you should use more fine things to nourish yourself. This blood jade is especially good for health. It suits you perfectly. As for the cost, it will naturally be charged to the prince's estate. We're all one family, so why speak like strangers?" I kept my demeanor extremely humble. With not a single fault to be found in my words or actions, the noble women around began to whisper among themselves, "This consort is truly magnanimous and virtuous. Indeed, she truly lives up to being the legitimate daughter raised by the Duke of Zhengguo's household. Such grace, tsk. In comparison, that Miss Wen appears rather petty. The lawful wife treats her with courtesy, yet she responds with sharp words in every sentence." When Yaoyu listened to the surrounding discussions, her face flushed bright red. Too angry to speak just then, Jiyu Lingchuan hurried in. He immediately spotted Wen Yaoyu, whose eyes were red-rimmed, and quickly stepped forward, shielding her behind him. "Jiang Zhiling, what are you trying to do to Yue again?" He arrived at just the right moment. I wore a look of confusion and hurt on my face. "Husband, what's wrong with you? I noticed that our sister likes our family's jewelry, so I thought of giving her a bracelet as a gesture of goodwill." Your goodwill is using these vulgar things to humiliate Yue." When Yaoyu hid behind him, peeking out with half her face, her eyes brimming with tears as she said, "Lingchuan, don't blame your sister. It's my fault. I shouldn't have come here. I just missed you so much." What a delicate white lotus watching them play off each other. I found it utterly ridiculous. I took a deep breath, as if having made some kind of resolution, and said to Jiyu Lingchuan, "Husband, I know you care deeply for your sister. Since that's the case, I am willing to step aside for you. I will go back and inform the princess consort, so we can bring your sister into the mansion and give her a proper status." Jiyu Lingchuan was stunned when Yaoyu was also stunned, but she quickly snapped out of it and screamed, "I refuse. When Yaoyu would rather die than be a concubine." Her face was resolute, as if she had suffered an immense insult. Jiyu Lingchuan immediately chimed in, "Yue is pure and innocent. How could she be a concubine? Jiang Zhiling, don't you dare pretend to be kind here." As soon as he said this, a soft but audible chuckle immediately came from the group of noble women watching nearby. A marquise covered her lips and whispered to her companion, "Pure and virtuous. Lady Wang, don't you think this Miss Wen looks somewhat familiar?" The woman addressed as Lady Wang narrowed her eyes and scrutinized her for a moment before exclaiming in sudden realization, "Oh my, it really is. Isn't this the one who, half a year ago, ignored all warnings and insisted on following the young master to the border, only to end up being captured by those barbarians?" Although their conversation was hushed, it was particularly clear in the now quiet shop. Another person immediately chimed in, "Exactly. I heard from my nephew who works in the Ministry of War that when this Miss Wen was found, she was already She deliberately paused, building up the suspense. Pregnant, TSK, who knows whose barbarian child it is? And she still dares to dream of becoming the official wife of the prince's household. With a boom, the crowd erupted into chaos, all eyes, sharp as knives, simultaneously focused on Wen Yaoyue's slightly swollen abdomen. Contempt, disdain, and mockery, all laid bare without concealment. Wen Yaoyue's face instantly drained of color, turning as pale as paper. She trembled all over, swaying unsteadily, as if she might collapse and faint at any moment. Jiyu Linchuan was also stunned by this sudden public humiliation. Holding Wen Yaoyu, he roared at the crowd, "Shut up! No one is allowed to speak nonsense." I stepped forward, shielding Wen Yaoyu with my body. "Please choose your words carefully. Sister Wen has already suffered an unfortunate fate beyond her control. How pitiable she is. As fellow women, why be so harsh and unkind?" Rubbing salt in her wounds, the noble women, caught off guard by my words, looked somewhat embarrassed and awkwardly closed their mouths. I turned around and gently patted Wen Yaoyue's trembling shoulder, soothing her softly. "Don't be afraid, sister. As long as I'm here, no one will bully you." Wen Yaoyu raised her tear-filled eyes, looking at me in disbelief. I ignored her and turned to Jiyu Linchuan instead, with a face full of sincerity and concern. "Husband, you've seen it too. Given my sister's current situation, staying outside alone will only subject her to gossip and disdain. If we bring her into the mansion, under the protection of the royal household, I, as her sister, can take care of her at all times and ensure her safety." Once again, I pushed the blood jade bracelet in front of him, my gesture utterly sincere. "As long as my sister is willing to endure a temporary grievance for the sake of our husband and the child in your womb, I, as the principal wife, am willing to make concessions. Tomorrow, I will arrange a grand procession with 8 bearers to bring my sister into the manor with honor." Oh my, the consort is truly a bodhisattva at heart, indeed. To not only refrain from despising the woman her husband loves despite such circumstances, but also to bring her into the manor for protection. What immense magnanimity! If it were me, I would have long since forced a bowl of abortifacient down her throat. When Yaoyu is truly fortunate, yet she still fails to appreciate such kindness. When my mother-in-law learned that I intended to bring Wen Yaoyu into the household as a concubine, she was so furious she nearly smashed her beloved Ru kill teacup. Nonsense. This is utter nonsense. How could a woman like her ever be worthy of entering the gates of our royal mansion? I knelt on the floor, bowing my head as I softly tried to console her. "Mother, this is a matter of necessity. My husband is deeply in love with her. If we forcibly separate them, I fear it will break his heart. Moreover, the child in her womb may very well be the bloodline of our royal mansion." My mother-in-law remained silent for a long time before finally letting out a deep sigh and helping me to my feet, her eyes filled with pain and pity. "You've really suffered, Jiling. Rest assured, as long as I'm here, I will never let her surpass you." To compensate me, my mother-in-law privately gave me several additional dowry shops and a manor, allowing me to firmly establish my footing in the royal residence. When Yaoyue's entry into the residence was neither grand nor modest. After all, she is just a concubine and cannot overshadow the prominence of me, the principal wife. She moved into the Clear Moon Pavilion, the closest building to Jiyu Linchuan's study, and spent every day clinging to him, either adding fragrance to his sleeves or playing the zither and painting. Eager to announce to everyone in the prince's mansion that she was a talented woman, she would often, as if unintentionally, bring gifts bestowed by Jiyu Linchuan when she came to my courtyard to pay respects, her words dripping with, "Sister, look. These are South Sea pearls that Linchuan specially sought out for me. He said they complement my complexion the most. Sister, last night Linchuan accompanied me to admire the moon and even composed a poem for me. He said I am his only confidant." I always listen with a smile, praising her pearls for their beauty and admiring Jiyu Linchuan's poetic talent, then rewarding her with even more luxurious fabrics and jewelry, sending her back in high spirits. My lack of contention, jealousy, or envy earned me the admiration of the household servants and gradually changed Jiyu Linchuan's perception of me. He no longer looked at me with the same disgust as before. Occasionally, When we met in the garden, he would even take the initiative to nod in greeting. One day, I was in the study organizing accounts when he walked in. He looked at the account books covering the desk and, for once, started a casual conversation with me. All of this, can you handle it? It's okay. I put down the pen in my hand, looked up at him, and said very sincerely, actually, I envy my sister. Gu Linchuan was taken aback. Envy her for what? I envy her for receiving all of our husband's love. I also admire our husband for being able to disregard worldly opinions and remain steadfast for the one he loves. I cannot be as carefree as my sister, but I will do my best to fulfill my role as the wife of the heir, managing the household affairs so that you have no worries. He seemed to want to say something, but in the end, he only said, rest assured, though I do not love you, I will give you all the respect that a proper wife deserves. I was waiting for him to say exactly that. Half a month later was the day for my return visit home. Gu Linchuan, surprisingly, took the initiative to offer to accompany me back in the carriage. He sat upright beside me, eyes closed in meditation, and we remained silent the entire way, but I knew this was already a huge step forward. I recalled the previous life, when I returned alone and endured countless cold stares in order to curry favor with the Rui prince's household. My father felt that I, his daughter, had brought him shame and refused to even see me. Only my mother and sister held my hand, secretly wiping away their tears in this lifetime. My father was beaming with joy, while Aunt Shuer and her daughter wore smiles that were uglier than tears. Seeing Gu Linchuan's meticulous care for me, my mother and sister finally revealed relieved smiles. After returning from my parents' home, that very night, fierce quarreling could be heard coming from the Clear Moon Pavilion. I sat in my own courtyard, sipping freshly brewed tea while listening to the faint sounds of crying and shouting in the distance, feeling quite pleased. A maid rushed over in a panic to report, "Madam, it's terrible. Lady Wen is bleeding." I set down my teacup, a faint smile flickering at the corner of my mouth. When I arrived at Qingyu Pavilion, Gu Linchuan was holding the unconscious Wen Yaoyu with a look of panic on his face, shouting at the servants to quickly fetch a doctor. His white robe was stained with a shocking patch of red. In the end, when Yaoyu's child could not be saved, the doctor said it was due to her excessive emotional agitation, which disturbed the fetus. This outcome was within everyone's expectations, but she didn't think so. After losing the child, she became completely silent and extremely gloomy. She no longer played the qin or painted, nor did she mock me with sarcasm anymore. She just lay in bed all day, drowning in tears. Gu Linchuan was heartbroken beyond measure. Feeling that it was his failure to take good care of her that had led to this tragedy, he grew even more tender toward Wen Yaoyu and even more guilty toward me because I appeared more heartbroken and more self-reproachful than he did. I sent all the precious tonics from the storeroom, 1,000-year-old ginseng, Snow Mountain Lingji mushrooms, and the finest quality bird's nest, flowing like a stream to the Clear Moon Pavilion. To avoid any suspicion, I specifically invited several renowned physicians from the capital to examine these supplements in front of Gu Linchuan, proving that there were no issues with them. The physicians unanimously praised the supplements, saying they were priceless and had remarkable effects in strengthening a woman's foundation and replenishing her vitality. Gu Linchuan was deeply grateful to me. Holding my hand, he sincerely said for the first time, "Jiling, thank you. In the past, I misunderstood you." I simply shook my head and said, "This is what I should do." But when Yaoyu completely disregarded my kindness, the tonics I sent over, she didn't even glance at them and directly ordered them all to be thrown out, smashed to pieces. She pointed at my nose, screaming hoarsely, "You poisonous woman, it's you, it must be you who harmed my child. Don't think I don't know what you're scheming, you just want to see me suffer." By the time Gu Linchuan arrived, this was the scene he witnessed. He looked at the mess all over the floor and when Yaoyu's face, twisted with jealousy and resentment, and for the first time, disappointment and exhaustion showed in his eyes. Where had the gentle, kind, and understanding Yue from his memories gone? Why had she become so extreme and unreasonable now? "Yue, stop making a scene. The crown princess consort is being kind-hearted. How can you be so ungrateful?" when Yao Yu looked at him in disbelief, as if she couldn't believe that Jiyu Linchuan, who had always unconditionally defended her, would actually scold her for my sake, she cried, her heart breaking with sorrow. That night, Jiyu Linchuan did not stay in Qingyu Pavilion but went to the study to drink alone in frustration. I calculated the timing perfectly, brewed a bowl of sobering soup, and personally brought it to him under the candlelight. His handsome face was full of drunkenness and sorrow. He held my hand and kept murmuring to himself, why has it come to this? Yua wasn't like this before." I didn't say a word, just quietly stayed by his side, listening to him pour out his heart. When he fell asleep on the table, I took him to the guest room in my courtyard. The next day, when Jiyu Linchuan woke up and saw that he was in my courtyard, he instantly became alert, his face full of panic and regret. He thought something had happened between us. Last night, I spoke before he could, my expression calm, even carrying a hint of understanding. "You were drunk last night. Nothing happened, don't worry, I won't tell anyone, let's just pretend, as if last night never happened. I don't want to cause any more misunderstandings between you and my sister because of me." He gave me a deep look, then fled in a panic. I knew, from that moment on, in his heart, the scales had already begun to tip. On the outskirts of Beijing, there stands a dilapidated temple, abandoned after a great fire many years ago. It is usually deserted, with only a few homeless beggars taking shelter here. This place was the end of my past life, yet it is the beginning of my present one. I chose an ordinary afternoon, changed into a simple and elegant outfit, and came here with 2 guards. Inside the dilapidated temple, a young scholar dressed in a faded blue robe was surrounded by several beggars, who were trying to snatch his tattered book box from his arms. Although he had a slender build, his back was ramrod straight, and his face was full of stubbornness and defiance. In broad daylight, "You dare to snatch someone else's property? Is there no law and order anymore?" He was Shen Yangjing in my previous life. When I was bullied by beggars, it was he who stood in front of me and drove those beasts away. He gave me the few copper coins he had, telling me to see a doctor, while he himself went hungry. Later, he achieved the top rank in the imperial examinations and became famous throughout the capital, searching everywhere for news of me. But by that time, I had already been imprisoned by Jiyu Linchuan in a cold, dark room, becoming pregnant again and again, only to lose the child each time. In the end, we missed each other in this life. I will not let the tragedy repeat itself. I had my guards step forward, and they quickly dealt with those beggars. Shen Yangjing bowed deeply to me. "Thank you, miss, for your help. I will never forget your great kindness." Looking at his handsome and resolute face, I smiled slightly. "It was nothing, no need to be so polite, young master." I offered to support him financially, but he refused with a righteous expression, saying he couldn't accept rewards without merit. I didn't argue with him further, but simply had my guard forcefully hand him a pouch filled with silver coins and a land deed. "This is a quiet residence in the western part of the city. Settle in peacefully and focus on your studies. As for this silver, consider it an early investment. Once you achieve success in the imperial examinations, repay me tenfold. How about that?" My words left him with no room for refusal. He held the object in his hand, looking at me with eyes full of gratitude and a hint of curiosity. "You're still so kind-hearted, you wouldn't even know if someone sold you out." The wind carried my voice away, and Shen Yangjing seemed to have heard it, his body trembling slightly. In the days that followed, I often visited that house. I brought him the finest brushes, ink, paper, and inkstones, sought out rare and precious ancient texts for him, and discussed poetry, songs, and the art of governing and benefiting the people with him. His feelings toward me gradually shifted from initial gratitude to something more complex and indescribable. The way he looked at me grew increasingly intense. The timing was almost ripe. That night, I told the people in the mansion that I was going to the estate outside the city to check the accounts and would not return for a day or 2. In reality, I went to the house in the west of the city. I brought a jug of wine and a few small dishes. Under the moonlight, we sat opposite each other and drank. I pretended I couldn't handle the alcohol, drinking until my cheeks flushed crimson and my eyes sparkled with a tipsy glow. I had slipped a little aphrodisiac into the wine to liven things up, not for him, but for myself. Shen Yangjing watched my dazed state, his Adam's apple bobbing as his breathing grew heavy and ragged. He wanted to restrain himself, to be a gentleman, but I actively entangled myself with him, using my inexperienced yet bold actions to ignite the flames he had long suppressed. That night, we tangled in the study, from the desk to the carpet, so wildly it felt as if we were trying to press each other into our very bones and blood. After it was over, I felt no attachment at all and quietly slipped away while he was fast asleep. A month later, I was overjoyed to discover that I was pregnant. The news of my pregnancy spread throughout the Rui manor. The prince and princess were overjoyed, smiling from ear to ear all day long, and gifts flowed like a stream into my courtyard. When Jiyu Linchuan heard the news, he was handling official business in his study. He froze for a long time, then quickly came to my room, looking at me with a complex expression in his eyes. The memory of that night is hazy for him. He only remembers being heavily drunk and waking up in my guest room with his clothes in disarray. He had already harbored doubts and an indescribable sense of regret, and now that I am pregnant, it has completely confirmed his suspicion of having acted recklessly under the influence of alcohol. He himself has also come to believe that this child is his. I caressed my still flat abdomen, looked at him with a sorrowful yet resolute expression, and said, "Husband, I know this child has come unexpectedly and has put you in a difficult position. If you are unwilling, if you are afraid that Sister Wen might misunderstand, I will quietly get rid of this child. I only hope that you and she will not let this create a rift between you." I place myself in a very low position, giving him all the power to make the choice, but I bet he wouldn't dare let me abort this child. This is his first child in name, the legitimate eldest grandson of the royal household. If word gets out that I had the abortion to make way for him and Wen Yaoyu, they would be drowned in the public scorn. He cannot afford the price. Sure enough, he remained silent for a long while before finally taking my hand, his voice hoarse yet resolute. "No, the child is innocent. You should rest and take care of the pregnancy. Once born, this child will be my legitimate eldest son, Jiyu Linchuan." He made his choice and, with his own hands, bestowed the most legitimate status upon the child in my womb. Upon learning of my pregnancy, when Yaoyu was deeply shaken, she frantically sought out various doctors to regulate her body, forcing Jiyu Linchuan to drink all kinds of tonic medicines every day, and then pestering him endlessly night after night, making excessive demands. At first, Jiyu Linchuan might have enjoyed it, but as time went on, he gradually felt overwhelmed. He had to handle official duties during the day and deal with Wen Yaoyu's obsessive clinginess at night, causing his entire being to visibly deteriorate. Once, due to his lack of energy, he made a mistake in the imperial court and was publicly reprimanded by the emperor. After returning, Jiyu Linchuan unleashed all his fury upon Wen Yaoyu for the first time. He accused her of being shameless and disregarding the bigger picture, and from then on, he refused to set foot in Qingyu Pavilion again. When Yaoyu was completely panicked, she began spreading rumors in the mansion, claiming that the child I was carrying was not the heir's at all. This remark reached the ears of the prince and princess. They were not fools. Naturally, they knew that Jiyu Linchuan had always been at odds with me, and the arrival of this child was indeed somewhat suspicious, although they had their doubts. For the sake of the prince's reputation, they could not make a scene until when Yaoyu pointed at my nose in front of everyone and questioned Jiyu Linchuan. "Do you dare say this child is yours? You clearly can't even be bothered to touch her." Everyone's gaze was fixed on Jiyu Linchuan. Jiyu Linchuan looked at the seemingly deranged Wen Yaoyu, then at my aggrieved expression. He stepped forward, pulled me into his embrace, and said coldly to Wen Yaoyu, "That night, I couldn't help myself. I know my own child well enough. There's no need for you to worry." Wen Yaoyu was as if struck by lightning, staggering back a few steps, her face filled with disbelief. She murmured to herself, "No, it can't be. It wasn't like this in the previous life. In the previous life, you clearly hated her the most. You clearly said you only loved me. I am your white moonlight." She mentioned the previous life. Jiyu Linchuan's brows furrowed deeply, and the way he looked at her was as if he were looking at a madwoman. "What nonsense are you talking about?" his last shred of patience for when Yaoyu had finally worn thin in the largest restaurant in the capital, Zuixianju. The noise of the crowd was overwhelming. Jiyu Linchuan sat alone in a corner, drinking in silence. Ever since when Yaoyu had spoken those insane words, he had completely lost his affection for her, believing that her mind had been damaged by the pain of losing her child at the next table. Several soldiers who had just returned from the border were laughing and talking loudly, boasting about their heroic deeds on the battlefield. You should have seen it. The enemy soldier we captured was as cowardly as a grandson. He confessed to everything. Exactly. And he even mentioned that they had once fooled around with some noblewoman from the capital. TSK, what a taste. A burly soldier, his face flushed red from drinking, vividly described. They say that woman is quite something. With a red crescent-shaped birthmark on her inner thigh, she's wild in bed, pestering them all day long. Later, when they had to move on and let her go, that bitch even cried and begged, refusing to leave. Crash, the wine glass. In Jiyu Linchuan's hand shattered instantly. He abruptly stood up, his eyes bloodshot like an enraged lion, glaring fiercely at the soldiers. A red crescent-shaped birthmark that was the most intimate mark between him and Wen Yaoyu. There was a time when he loved to linger there the most, treasuring it like a precious gem. You, what nonsense are you talking? He roared, overturning the table, and charged toward those soldiers like a madman. Finally, Jiyu Linchuan was carried back to the residence by the palace guards, bruised and battered instead of tending to his wounds. He stormed straight into the Qingyu pavilion. Soon, the sound of Wen Yaoyue's piercing cries and Jiyu Linchuan's furious roars echoed from within. Sitting in my own courtyard, I listened to the quarrels coming from not far away and found the noise more pleasing than any music in the world. I poured myself a cup of sake, raised it to the cold moonlight on the horizon, and drank it all in one go. In my previous life, on the night of our grand wedding, when Yaoyu proudly whispered in my ear, boasting about how the young master couldn't get enough of the birthmark on her inner thigh. Wasn't she always so fond of showing off in this life? I will make that birthmark a shame she can never wash away for all eternity. In the spring imperial examination results announcement, Shen Yangjing lived up to expectations and achieved the top rank as the Zhuangyuan. For a time, the entire capital was abuzz with talk of this exceptionally talented and handsome new top scholar. On the day the Zhuangyuan was honored with a banquet at Qianglin Garden, I accompanied Jiyu Linchuan with generous gifts to offer congratulations. Jiyu Linchuan now treats me with a bit more respect and reliance, especially after when Yaoyu became increasingly deranged. He seemed to finally recognize the value of me, his lawful wife. At the banquet, glasses clinked and toasts were exchanged. Shen Yangjing, dressed in his crimson scholar's robe, stood at the center of the crowd, radiating confidence and pride, yet his gaze repeatedly drifted over the crowd, settling on me with an intensity that felt as if it could burn me. I excused myself to freshen up and left the bustling banquet hall. Just as I reached a deserted corridor, someone grabbed my wrist from behind and abruptly dragged me into an empty room nearby. The door was locked from the inside. Shen Yangjing pinned me against the door panel, his eyes swirling with an intense emotion I couldn't decipher. Consort, long time no see. His voice was low and hoarse, carrying a hint of gritted teeth. You have such a cruel heart. After that night, you cast me aside like a worn-out shoe and left without a word. My heart skipped a beat. This is Shen Yangjing. How could the gentle, refined, and courteous gentleman from my previous life have turned into this state? The way he looks at me is full of aggression and possessiveness, like a wolf that has been lying in wait for a long time, finally baring its fangs. I have a strong, guilty feeling of being caught in an affair. Lord Shen, please have some self-respect. I tried to push him away, but he held me even tighter. Self-respect, he chuckled softly, his scorching breath spraying by my ear. When you climbed into my bed, why didn't you think of those two words? You. I was momentarily speechless. He lowered his head and gently bit my earlobe. Tell me, what will it take for you to agree to a divorce and marry me? My heart skipped a beat. I looked into his deep eyes and said word by word, never divorce. Unless my husband dies. His body stiffened for a moment, then he planted a lingering, passionate kiss by my ear before reluctantly letting me go. I understand. I straightened my clothes and returned to the banquet hall with a lingering blush on my face. Gu Linchuan, seeing me return, asked with concern, "Why were you gone for so long, and why is your face so red?" "Perhaps the wind was a bit too strong," I replied calmly. Gu Linchuan, without any suspicion, carefully protected my belly and took me back to the residence. As soon as we entered the gate, we saw Wen Yaoyu rushing over with disheveled hair, her eyes filled with undisguised hatred. In her hands, she held a bowl of dark, murky medicinal soup, ready to splash it all over me. Fortunately, the nanny beside me acted swiftly, pushing her away in the nick of time. The medicinal broth spilled all over the ground, sizzling as it emitted a plume of black smoke. Caught red-handed, Gu Linchuan stared at the spilled broth on the floor. His face ashen with fury, he rushed forward and slapped Wen Yaoyu hard across the face. "You vicious woman, how dare you harm my child? You are simply unworthy of being human." That slap completely shattered the last bit of affection between them. Wen Yaoyu was locked in the Qingyu pavilion, and Gu Linchuan ordered that she be handed over to the authorities first thing tomorrow morning. I knew she was finished that night. I instructed my personal maid to quietly give some silver to the guard woman and also gave Wen Yaoyu a sum of money. "Tell her to run outside the city. The farther the better." The maid was puzzled, but I offered no explanation. Wen Yaoyu, it was time for her to go where she belonged. Wen Yaoyu took the money I gave her and fled the Wang residence overnight. Panic-stricken, she fled all the way out of the city. Exhausted, she hid in that familiar, dilapidated temple, intending to rest there for the night. The beggars in the temple heard the jingling of the money pouch she carried and also caught sight of her face, which, though haggard, still retained a certain charm. They were like a pack of starving wolves that had caught the scent of blood, swarming in all at once. 3 days later, a murder case was reported from the abandoned temple. The newly appointed top scholar, Shen Yangjing, took personal charge of the investigation into the case. The townspeople were abuzz with rumors, saying that a young woman had been brutally assaulted and tortured to death by more than a dozen beggars, and her death was extremely tragic. The government sent someone to the royal residence to ask Gu Linchuan to identify the body. He did not go, only coldly saying, "Unlucky." I went. I looked at the body that was no longer recognizable as human, at the crescent-shaped birthmark on her inner thigh that had turned blue and purple, and felt not a single ripple of emotion in my heart. "Wen Yaoyu, everything you inflicted upon me in our past life, I have now returned to you." The death of Wen Yaoyu was like a thorn piercing Gu Linchuan's heart. He began to have frequent nightmares, dreaming of Wen Yaoyu covered in blood, coming to demand his life. He became mentally distracted and grew increasingly thin. He started trying to seek comfort from me, wanting to get close to me, but I only felt utterly disgusted. Secretly, I added a medicinal ingredient to his daily diet that conflicted with the potent tonic he was taking. This medicine wouldn't kill him immediately, but it would gradually weaken his body, making him lose all interest in marital affairs over time. After 10 months of pregnancy, I successfully gave birth to a boy. He is the sole heir of the prince's mansion and my future support. However, Gu Linchuan's health completely collapsed at this moment. He was tormented by nightmares every night, and during the day, he was listless, as if he were a useless person. The prince and princess were deeply worried and took him to the famous ancient temples in the outskirts of the capital to pray to the gods and Buddhas. Hoping to ward off evil and avert disaster on their way back, their convoy unfortunately encountered a group of fierce bandits. From then on, Prince Rui and his wife, along with their precious son, were neither seen alive nor found dead. They simply vanished without a trace. The sky above the prince's mansion had collapsed. I, the newly widowed princess consort, holding my infant son in my arms, became the sole master of the royal mansion. In an extremely secret hidden chamber, I met Gu Linchuan. His eyes had been gouged out, his tongue cut off, and his limbs severed. He was thrown on the cold ground like a pile of mud. He had been turned into a human swine. Shen Yangjing stood beside me, looking down at him with a cold smile playing at the corners of his lips. A guttural hair sound escaped his throat as his body convulsed violently, tears of blood streaming from his eyes. I laughed even more gleefully. Shen Yangjing and I, right in front of him, were intimately entangled without the slightest restraint. Listening to the sounds we made, he trembled with rage, his body shaking as if seized by epilepsy. After it was done, Shen Yangjing looked at him and calmly said to the servant beside him, "It seems the young master is feeling restless. Go find a few men to properly attend to him." Several lecherous-looking men dragged Jiyu Linchuan into the inner chamber. Throughout the entire night, heart-wrenching cries of agony from Jiyu Linchuan could be heard from inside. Leaning against Shen Yangjing, I asked him, "How have you become even more ruthless than I am?" He was silent for a long moment, then held me tightly and whispered in my ear, "Compared to what he did to you in your past life, what does any of this matter?" I swore I would make him wish he were dead. I froze for a moment, then smiled and asked, "So, have you avenged me?" He kissed me deeply and said, "Your vengeance is mine to take, the rest of your life is mine to protect." As for the prince and princess, I did not make things difficult for them. I simply sent them to a picturesque town in Jiangnan, provided them with enough gold and silver to live out their remaining years in peace, and forbade them from ever returning to the capital. 16 years later, the prince and princess, far away in Jiangnan, passed away peacefully of old age. The Rui Manor welcomed its new master, Mai and Jiyu Linchuan's son, now the heir to the Rui prince. After years of widowhood, the former princess consort Jiang Zhiling finally decided to remarry. Shen Yangjing, the grand tutor of the court, married her with a grand procession of 188 dowry chests, stretching for miles in a sea of red. On that day, the capital was abuzz, and the streets were packed with crowds. The world says that Grand Tutor Shen and Lady Jiang share a deep affection, enduring hardships until the clouds part and the moon shines bright. Truly a beautiful tale. After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.